Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. Banana robbers! They were laughing as they took the last of the money from the friendly banana bank. They knew that after this day, that they would be the richest bananas of the banana world. They had to make a quick escape, though. The alarms were ringing in their ears. The banana cops were on their way. They could just hear the cops as they ran. Be Banana and Go Banana made a great team. They were the best bananas at robbing. They knew that after they robbed, they would have to split the money and have to pretend that they were innocent. They were also great actors. They knew to be part of the banana stampede after they robbed, so they could pretend like they were there the whole time. The banana stampede took place every day at the banana park. It was the best place to hide after doing something wrong. Everyone at the banana stampede knew how it felt to do something wrong. They were all banana criminals at one point. They all got the wrath of the sacred rule breaking punishment. They all stopped committing crimes after that. Once they reached the banana stampede, they were very hangry, so they killed a fellow banana and ate him. They hid the remains of the fellow banana. They knew that if they got caught, then they would be in huge trouble. They heard the banana cops coming. The cops started asking around if they saw anyone who came from the direction of the friendly banana bank. One of the bananas started crying. She told everyone that Be Banana and Go Banana killed her husband. The cops took them to banana court. They finally started court after a long lecture about how you drive banana cars, which was way off topic. They had the whole banana stampede there that was not causing a stampede currently. They had a bunch of chairs in random groups. The judge was sitting down in a giant chair with bananas all over it. He also had a small desk with a banana volunteer to be the hammer. Welcome to the all-wonderful court, where we find out if you are guilty or not. Da Banana Judge told everyone, "Everyone take your seats and be quiet unless I tell you to speak. Today, we have two problems. The friendly banana bank has been robbed with not a single trace of money left. There was also a murder at the banana stampede that was caught by Mrs. Banana, witnessed. Mrs. Banana, will you tell us what you saw?" Of course, I was talking to him, and all of the sudden, I saw a knife through him. I looked behind him, and I saw Be Banana and Go Banana with the knife. Then they ate every single little piece of him. It was like a nightmare. Mrs. Banana declared. Be banana and go banana. You two have earned 10 seconds in jail so far. Da Banana, judge said. Mr. Peel, you said you saw who stole the money from the Friendly Banana Bank. Will you tell us what you saw? Yes, I was walking my banog, and I saw Be Banana and Go Banana walk into the bank. I stalled so I could see what they were doing. After a while, they came out with stacks and stacks of money. I ran as fast as I could to the nearest cop. I told them what I saw. That day, I also saw them steal all my banog bones. I was so mad. I wanted to tell the cops, but I thought that it wasn't as important as other things. Mr. Peel said, Thank you, Be Banana and Go Banana. Will you tell us your side of the story to see if you get 15 seconds in the corner or not? Da Banana, judge said. Yes, the wonderful judge. We were at the banana restaurant, and then when we were done, we saw Mr. Peel steal the money. We saw him run to his house and then tell the cops lies. When we went down to the banana stampede and saw Mrs. Banana murder her own husband, Go Banana said. By this point, the room was filled with murmurs. Everyone was standing, and they were scared to know who was the actual imposter. The volunteer banana hit his loudly and hard on purposely. The room filled with silence. Thank you. I cannot tell who is guilty or not, so you four get to go to jail for 20 seconds. Da Banana, judge, said. Be bananas. Go bananas. Mrs. Bananas. And Mr. Peel's faces were filled with shock. The banana cops pushed them into a jail. 20 seconds later, they were free to go out. Be Banana and Go Banana knew that that was an awful punishment and that they would never commit a crime again. But one thing bothered them. They wanted to know the punishments. They knew that they shouldn't commit another crime to do it, but catch someone committing a crime. One day, they reported someone stealing someone's jewelry. It was Mr. Chop, who was a retired server. Once they got to court, there was another lecture about how it is so easy to turn sides, and another lecture after that about what kind of bananas make videos. Finally, court started, and they found out that Mr. Chop was actually just helping a friend return jewelry. No one was put in jail, but on the way out, while DA Judge was having a conversation with other people, Be Banana and Go Banana stole the sacred rule book. They almost got caught, and they decided to take a drive. They didn't take just any drive. They took the longest drive ever in the banana history. The drive took 12 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. The next day, they went on the second longest drive in the banana history. They drove through mountains and valleys and finally onto the banana interstate. The murder of Prissy Baver The Blauwevmans County Police Station was a horrible place for officers and criminals alike. The station had been built in 1932, and to most everyone's sadness, had been one of the only buildings to hold up during the Second World War. The station was built from old, withering bricks, and the man who was in charge of keeping the ivy along the sides of the building contained was too busy hitting on women to actually get the job done. The inside was even worse. The oak doors were creaky on their rusty hinges, and the musty concrete jail cells were cracking due to the recent heat surge the Netherlands were experiencing. The small cubicles for officers were tight, and the air conditioning rarely worked. To make things worse, the computer system was terrible. Sometimes, officers would sit for hours just to wait for a 12-page document to load. It didn't help that Blauwevmans was a city in the middle of the mountains, away from most metropolitan. Just getting into the next county took 2 hours. The only good thing that had happened to the police station in the past month was that the exterminator had came. The rats were gone, and they wouldn't be back. But from where Evian van Beek was sitting, she swore she saw a rat scurry past the chief of police's office as she and Lucas Hoysk waited to be called in for questioning. Evi tapped her feet on the wooden floors, anxiously looking around. The police station was crowded for a Sunday night. Some officers were packing up to leave for the night. Others cursed as their computers failed to upload their files. It looked like one of the cops, Sergeant Shea, was having a small party. Evi leaned over her seat, watching some of the officers chat and shove forkfuls of red velvet cake into their mouths. Maybe a birthday? Evi slouched back into her chair and sighed. Lucas bit his lip, staring curiously at the ceiling. Evi knew that look. "What denk je wel net?" Evi asked, pushing a dark hair out of her face. Lucas shot Evi an alarmed look. "Evi," he hissed, "talk ahead angles." Evi gave him a puzzled look. They were both studying English as a world language. They were almost fluent. But why practice for the upcoming test when they're in a police station about to get questioned as suspects of a murder? Evi looked around before repeating her question. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas rubbed his strawberry blonde hair. "They can't understand us if we talk in English," he said, his Dutch accent well enunciated. Lucas tilted his head to the side, indicating the officers eating cake behind him. Lucas continued, a worried look on his face. "I know the plan didn't exactly go according to plan." Evi shot Lucas a deadly glare. "Lucas, we killed..." Evi peered over her shoulder, making sure the officers weren't paying any attention to them. She lowered her voice. "Pressy, we killed Pressy, the mayor's son, but they have no proof it is us. All they saw was the security tapes," Lucas stated, exasperated. "We were running. So what? That could mean we were running away from the murderer." Evie bit her lip. We did it. We have to confess. If we don't, and they find out it was us, there will be much bigger. Is it consequences? Lucas shook his head. Consequences, you mean? But what if they don't find out it was us? We could lie and be done with this. And what if they do? Evie hissed loudly, tears sparkling in her eyes. She tugged at the neckline of her purple shirt. Either way, I do not want to end up in Gavanjanus. Lucas frowned. I'm afraid neither lying nor telling the truth will get you out of jail. At least we have a shot if we lie, but that is not the right thing to do. We could get a worse sentence if they do find out it was us. Lucas, we killed someone, Evie cried. Small tears began to flow from her blue eyes and stream down her face. Lucas looked over at her helplessly, gritting his teeth. His knuckles were white as they gripped the seat of his chair. They're going to call us in any minute, Lucas said softly. So pick your poison. Evie dried her tears, sighing sadly. She looked up and pointed to the chief's door. Lucas, the chief. Ich kommt heran. Evie gasped. Lucas suddenly looked very worried, but he put on a fierce face. As the chief turned the brass doorknob from the inside, Lucas took a deep breath and whispered, Let's go, Evie. Barvan de Vries was a tall man with wispy black hair and piercing dark blue eyes. He wore his shiny gold badge proudly and was never without a gun under his sweater. In the work area, he wore his gun on his utility belt. Much to the chief's pleasure, the weapon seemed to intimidate the teenage suspects in front of him. The two, according to his files, were seemingly clean, but were the primary suspects for the murder of Tracy Baver, Evian van Beek, and Lucas Hoysk. Chief de Vries's lips curled. This would be fun. The chief put on a menacing face and looked from Lucas to Evie. The girl was fidgeting slightly, almost unsure of what to think. Lucas, however, seemed relatively calm. It was an odd combination of suspects, especially partners in crime. But then, many odd people had entered the Blauwe-Mans County Police Station. This pair would be no different from the rest. But, the chief thought, odd combinations often have, shall we say, different stories. Barvan tapped his door with his knuckles, his eyes trained on Evie. His first victim. The chief gestured to Evie, whose eyes widened. Evian van Beek? Evie bit her lip. It looked as if the girl was blinking back tears. Ja, she answered. De Vries nodded approvingly. De tide is here. Komen Evian, the chief said, clapping his hands. Evie looked desperately at Lucas, and then at the chief. Alsjeblieft, een moment? She asked in a small voice. Lucas gave Evie an alarmed look as the chief processed what the suspect had just said. De Vries scowled, but gave in. Prima, the chief muttered, his eyebrows furrowing. Fine, Evie repeated in English, sighing. She turned to Lucas. I'm telling the truth, she said sternly. It's the right thing to do. Lucas looked angry for a moment, but then softened. His cheeks were red. Fine, he spat. But if we get out of here with no mark on our permanent record, you can thank me. So you are still... Levi stopped, eyes glancing toward Barvin. At least I will have done something for the good of the world. I am, as they say, avenging his death, if that is right context. Levi lowered her voice. We killed him. Jail time, nothing will take that fact away. Sergeant Patrick Shea stepped out from the open room. His party was being held. He had been leaning on the door sill and listening to the pair's conversation since they had been seated. Sergeant Shea nodded to the chief. Mynheer de Vries, Shea addressed the chief. Barvan raised an eyebrow. Yeah? He asked. The sergeant gestured to the teens. Shea turned and gave Lucas and Levi a small smile. Then, in crisp English, he said, These are our killers, sir. Evian van Beek and Lucas Hoysk, convicted of the manslaughter of Pressy Baver, who killed Amu's son. A loud scream pierced the stillness of the night, and it sent chills down my spine. I heard someone crying in the neighbor's house. The time in the clock showed 12:45 a.m. I was here at my aunt's house, enjoying a long vacation. After my final year degree exams, I knocked on my aunt's door, knowing that she must be fast asleep after taking her medicines. My aunt opened her door, looking worried and groggy. I heard some screams from the neighbor's house. I think there is some problem. I am going there to inquire, I said. She said she would come too, as she didn't want me to go alone. It was warm and sultry outside. We started walking towards the house in the dim lights of the street, amidst the cloud calls of night insects all around us. My aunt lived in a small, beautiful village in Kerala, which was just an hour away from the city. Her only son had migrated to Canada a few years ago and wanted my aunt to join him. But she always refused, saying she was happy in her little village, surrounded by friends and relatives, and didn't want to be uprooted. The distance to the neighbor's house was not much. There were paddy fields all around, bordered by huge coconut trees, which were swaying in the mild breeze. It was a huge house, away from all the other houses that led to a long, narrow pathway connecting the main road ahead. The house belonged to Amu, a 70-year-old widow who had suffered a paralytic stroke. Few years back, since then, had spent most of her time in a wheelchair. Amna, a middle-aged lady, was hired as a nurse, come companion, to take care of her, and she lived with Amu in the same house as she had no family of her own. There was a cook and a maid who would come in the morning and leave by evening. The lights were on in all the rooms, and the main door was open. We saw Amu huddled in the wheelchair, weeping bitterly, with Omna standing beside her. As soon as we entered, Amna came running to my aunt. She was crying, her face contorted with fear, saying nothing we could understand. My aunt calmed her down, and I went to pacify Amu, who was in a bad shape. Through their sobs, we gathered that Amu's son was lying dead in his room above, and it seemed someone had strangled him. My aunt was too stunned to react and didn't know what to say or do. We just stood there, watching Amu and her nurse clinging to each other and sobbing. By this time, some more neighbors walked in, hearing the commotion. My aunt told them what had happened, and one of them called for the police. The police came in quickly with a doctor who examined the body and declared him dead. They took charge of the body and looked around for fingerprints and other clues. There were no fingerprints, as if the killer had wiped it all after committing the crime. An ambulance was called in, and the body was taken to the hospital for post-mortem. The police came down to interrogate Amu and the nurse. Amna said around 12 a.m. they heard Dev, Amu's son, enter the house as he had his own set of keys. They heard some voices. The son was talking to someone, but they didn't think much about it, as he was in the habit of bringing his friends home, and they would have another round of drinks, which would go on till wee hours of morning. She and Amu then went back to sleep. Amna always slept in Amu's room, in case she needed some assistance during the night. After a while, they woke up to a loud thud and heard footsteps running down the stairs. By the time Amna came out, the intruder was long gone. She found the main door was wide open. Sensing trouble, she called out to Amu's son, but he didn't reply, and so she went up to check on him. Except for a night lamp, all the lights of his room switched off. He was lying on the floor, motionless. She went near him and saw some ligature marks on his neck. Being a nurse, she recognized those marks. She checked his pulse and found none. She ran down screaming. Amu was devastated to hear the news and had been sobbing since then. The police turned to her to record her statement, but she was in no state to say anything. They said they would come again to interrogate Amu. They sealed the room and warned that no one should enter the scene of crime. It's going to be a long night, so you can go home and sleep. My aunt said. I told her I'm fine, as I wanted to be with her. We stayed with Amu the whole night. She was sobbing and calling out to her only child. A doctor was called in, who gave her a sedative that soon took effect, and Amu fell asleep. It was nearly 5 a.m. when we returned home, and none of us could sleep anymore. My aunt made us coffee, and we sat at the long wooden table in the kitchen, discussing the turn of events. She looked perturbed. She said, "It's the first time such a horrific incident had taken place. The village was very safe, and they all lived like one big family. I was aware of it, as I always visited her during my school and college vacations, and it was a second home for me. Amu's husband was a wealthy landlord, and he owned nearly a quarter of the total land in the area. Amu was a very pious lady who always helped the poor, and no one returned empty-handed from her doorstep. There was an orphanage for destitute children and a home for senior citizens, totally funded by Amu. She owned many paddy and rubber plantations, from where she earned all the income. Her only son, Dev, turned out to be a lazy scoundrel. I never got along with him because he was always arrogant and rude, even as a schoolboy. He never helped in the family business. He kept bad company and often picked fights with the villagers, and sometimes even misbehaved with the ladies of the village. People tolerated him because of Amu, or he would have been languishing in jail for some time now. He had raped a poor, innocent girl, Minu, from the village, who eventually committed suicide, and Amu had hushed up the matter by compensating the girl's family handsomely, asking them to leave the village. Everyone in the village hated Dev, being the only child. Amu had spoiled him rotten. She was blind to his faults and indulged him by fulfilling all his demands, and this took him further on the road of destruction. Too late, the consequences of her indulgence dawned upon Amu. Now she was keeping a tight fist on her money, which infuriated the son even more. And there were instances where he had raised his hand on his old invalid mother for money. Once he had hit Amu so bad that she had to be hospitalized for her injuries. But she told the doctors that she fell in the bathroom. He always treated Omna as a minion and left no chance to belittle her, which she ignored only for Amu. The next day, the police came to interrogate Amu. They said the post-mortem report revealed that the alcohol level was very high in the victim's blood, and he didn't put up any resistance to the murderer. They asked Amu if she suspected anyone. She said he had many enemies, and it was difficult to pinpoint any one person. "Are any valuables missing?" asked the policeman. Amu said she kept everything in the bank, except for a little money for her personal expenses in the house. The police ruled out robbery as a motive and felt it must be some personal enmity. They had also checked his call details, but did not find anything suspicious. The last rites of Amu's son took place the next day. Amu sat there, stony-faced and dry-eyed. The whole village had turned up for the funeral, more out of respect for Amu than for her son. The police summoned her son's friends to interrogate them. They told the police that they were all drinking together in the bar, and after some time, everyone left for their respective homes. Their call records were checked, their family interrogated, but no incriminating evidence was found against them. All the goons and miscreants from the village were rounded up for questioning, but the police couldn't find any concrete evidence against any of them, and they were let off, as they all had cast iron alibis. They interrogated everyone from the village, including my aunt and me. The investigation progressed, but nothing much came out of it. The police returned after 2 weeks and told Amu that they have found no clue to conclude. It was an outsider's job. They wanted to interrogate Amna, the cook, and the maid again. The cook and the maid said they both had left the house in the evening. Amna repeated her same story, supported by Amu. The police did not argue much, and they left, saying they would keep the investigation on, and if they get any further information, they would let her know. Soon, a month passed, and it was time for me to return home. I booked my flight for the following Sunday evening, 10 p.m. I wanted to go and meet Amu, but she's still in a state of shock and wasn't meeting anyone. My aunt was feeling bad that I had to witness this horrific incident, but I assured her that I was fine. At 8 p.m., the cab driver called to say he was waiting at the end of the road to avoid the potholes and asked me to walk up to the cab. I didn't mind, as I had only one bag, and it wasn't much of a distance. I bid my aunt goodbye, promising to visit her soon, and started walking down the road. I walked past Amu's house, which was in darkness, except for a night lamp in the living room. Amu slept early, by 8 p.m., and no one was allowed to disturb her. Once she was in bed, I heard some voices coming from her living room. Thinking she was still awake, I peeped from the window to shout out a final goodbye. The sight inside chilled my bones. Amu was walking towards the staircase erect and without any support. She climbed the stairs and within no time disappeared inside the room. Amna was sitting near the lamp and reading a book. I was too scared to move or speak and stood rooted to the spot. I managed to reach the cab and literally collapsed on the seat. Throughout my journey, that scene haunted me. Amu could walk? Why was she hiding this fact? Was she the one who climbed up and strangled her son? Or was it Amna? Did they tell lies to the police that they had heard Dev talking to someone the night of murder? I was befuddled by all these questions and couldn't find any answers. I reached the airport by 8:30, checked in and sat down in a corner, lost in thought. Mr. Roy! Mr. Roy! Someone was shaking me rudely. I saw 3 policemen standing before me. I was wondering, why were they calling my name? You will have to come with us, as you're under arrest for the murder of Amu's son, Dev, one of them said loudly. Before I could react, they handcuffed me and bundled me into their jeep. My aunt was already in the police station, crying and looking at me in disbelief. How can you arrest me? Do you have any proof? I shouted. The inspector looked at me with a gleam in his eyes and asked me, do you deny that you know Minu? The girl who committed suicide after she was raped. Weren't you in love with her? Isn't it true, the moment you realized that Amu's son had raped her, you wanted to kill him? Didn't you come with a plan to murder Dev? He was throwing questions at me, one after the other, without waiting for an answer. The inspector said that after interrogating almost everyone from the village, he was perplexed, as he couldn't find any evidence against anyone. So, on a hunch, he went to meet Minu's father, who lived in another district. The father was still grieving his daughter's death. He told the inspector that his daughter was a talented artist and had received a scholarship from a reputed arts college, which had been her dream. He proudly showed all her paintings to the inspector. Among those paintings was one of mine, which the inspector instantly recognized. He asked the father about the picture. The father told him that his daughter was in love with this boy. And that moment, the inspector knew it was me. He said that night, I left the house after my aunt went to sleep, knowing she takes sleeping pills and won't wake up until morning. I waited for Dev outside his house and persuaded him to invite me in on the pretext of discuss something important. The moment we went to his room, I strangulated him. I pleaded with them that it's all just a bunch of lies and false implications. I can never murder anyone, but everything I said was falling in deaf ears. I wanted to tell them about Amu's secret, but no one would believe me. My mind was numb. I was trying to recollect the events of that night before I heard the piercing scream, but everything was blank. I couldn't remember anything. Was it possible that I had murdered Dev? I felt an icy grip squeezing my heart. What would you like, sir? Sir, we need you. Ed, please don't panic. Tell me what happened. A man died at 4th Rose Street in Pi A Trust Bakery. Pray, tell his name. Robert Jr. Business tycoon Robert Jr. A sudden alarm switches on in my mind. You are right, sir. I hang up the phone. A new case is like coffee shots for me. Sudden shots of energy with a sudden smell of success. Being a private detective was tough in 1959. The remnants of World War were still haunting people's minds. So basically, everyone was behind food and money. Hence, the rise of murders and death of rich men were the constant headline of newspapers and weekly magazines. The police were sometimes behind the culprit, or were sometimes the culprit themselves. My first successful case was about Dorothy Maddock, a murder mystery that had shaken the neighborhood. At that time, I was 19, who had only read Sherlock Holmes as his curriculum and used to write some articles for a newspaper column. Back then, I took the case for justice, not for fame or success. With my wit and observation, I nabbed the murderer to everyone's surprise and dismay. The success of the case made fame kiss my toes, but the police grew cold feelings towards me. First, the bitterness was one-sided. Later, with the continued collision of our thinking and ideas, it became a competition for us to prove each other wrong. Coming to the case, Robert Jr. was famous as well as an established businessman. He was constantly in the newspaper due to the rounds of an affair between him and a beautiful singer. The case was a gold mine for the press because now it had glamour and stardom, I reached the spot. It was a small sit-in bakery with musty brown walls and white windows. It was unusual for a rich man to dine here. People were thronging outside the bakery to view the sudden death. Police were having a tough time trying to control the mob. I honk my Ford car on purpose to gain the attention of the press. In seconds, a group of photographers and cameramen with their journalists were rushing towards my car. I took some time to come out of my car, but when I came out, I was surrounded by the sudden flashes which blind my irises. There is a constant tugging and screaming of journalists at my face. I raise my hand to silence everyone, to bring their attention towards me. I will ensure that the culprit is caught and the innocents are given justice. With the help of the police, we will solve the crime as soon as possible. Till then, please maintain your integrity and work ethics. I make a straight beeline towards the bakery, where I'm coldly welcomed by Inspector Houston. Don't come here, fella, without any prior information. Take your media attention somewhere else. He smirks. It would be better if you pay enough attention to your duty, rather than observing my style and sensibility. He stares at me and spits on the ground. So what are the details of the case, Mr. Houston? According to the witness, Robert entered the bakery with singer Sasha. They ordered a lime tart with lemonade. Then, in the middle of the conversation, an argument burst open. A few seconds later, he asks for water, which was given by Sasha from her bottle. In moments, he clenched his head and passed out. So, where is the singer now? She is in the basement of the bakery, hiding from the press. Bring in all the witnesses, and let's interview each one there itself. We agreed to investigate the scene first. Nothing was weird, nor there was anything suspicious. Then we interrogated each eyewitness. First was the singer Sasha, a beautiful woman in her early 20s, with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her cheeks were stained by mascara, and her lips quivered from the constant crying. It was odd that a young girl like her was interested in a man who was in his late 40s. But it is not odd in a patriarchal society. I gave her my handkerchief. A man gotta respect a lady's emotion. So, Miss Sasha, what happened during your brunch at the bakery? Robert called me here to discuss some private matters. He was stressed for the past few weeks. Can you guess what he was about to discuss? I ask. She moves her head from side to side with few sobs. Miss Sasha, when Robert asked for water. Instead, you could have called the waiter. Why did you provide it from your bottle? Robert liked clean filter water. He always used to question the quality of water at restaurants. Hence, I used to carry my own source. Did you hand over the bottle to the police? She nodded. The next person was the waitress, the only witness who was present at the bakery. A young woman in her mid-20s with hazel eyes and raven black hair. She was confident with her body language and was least affected by the sudden death. What's your name? Rebecca Taylor. For how long you are working here? Since the past few weeks. Can you describe what happened this morning? Mr. Robert was coming to our bakery for the last few days, but this time he came with Miss Sasha. He ordered tart, and she ordered lemonade. It's wrong to eavesdrop on anybody's conversation, so I was at my counter cleaning the stoves. But in the middle of their conversation, they started arguing. Mr. Robert was demanding Miss Sasha to leave her career. Then he asked for water, to which she gave her own bottle. And in a matter of seconds, he clenched his head and fell on the ground. Where was the owner of the shop? Every morning, the owner goes to buy the supplies for the rest of the day. He went out as usual. The next person was the cleaner boy, who was not the witness. But he was there in the basement of the bakery when the incident took place. What's your name? Vade Danish. So, Vade Miss Rebecca told me that you went to the basement to take a puff of the cigarette. Sometimes you had to twist other people's confession to extract the truth. No, sir. Miss Rebecca had seen a few mice in our basement, so I went there to get rid of them. Okay, so for how long are you working here? 2 years. Everything was done. We talked to the witness. We investigated the scene, but couldn't find a clue. The police, as well as I, was waiting for the medical reports of the corpse, but it had a lot of time to it. Miss Sasha was on house arrest, and other people were under observation. I took a few days to search for the missing links in this case, but could not find one. This morning, I decided to give a visit to the bakery. Through the glass windows, I could see Rebecca taking orders from the customer and Vade helping his owner. I enter inside, and Rebecca gasps her breath seeing me. Did I frighten you, Miss Rebecca? No. I mean, yes. The incident has made us face the worst fears that we never could have expected. What will you like, sir? She asks in a humble tone. Oh, nothing. I just want to sit and relax for a few seconds. Nothing else. She goes away, leaving me in silence. I try to connect the information that I had about this case, but couldn't figure out any missing links. A force knocks at my temples. The migraine bouts were reoccurring every morning. I press my fingers at my head to ease out the pain. I search my pockets for the container of pills, but I couldn't find them. Sir, are you okay? I see Rebecca beside my table. Yeah, everything is fine. Nothing to bother about. She puts a tray in front of me. It has herb tea and strawberry custard. It's for your migraine, sir. It will soothe your nerves. I thank her and dig in my spoon because I have skipped my breakfast this morning. At the last spoon, a thought occurred to me. To clear it, I needed to meet the doctor who was examining the body as well as the reports. I rush out of the bakery without paying the bill and race my car to the hospital. Doctor, did Robert had a migraine? Because according to the witness, he clenched his head before passing out. Did he get a migraine attack while having the arguments with the singer? I don't know, lad. Maybe he had, maybe he hadn't. The technology isn't so developed to bring in the conclusions. What did you find in the reports? The mystery is that we couldn't find anything with his body. The brain and his other organs were intact. But his blood reports are weird. What does the report say? That during their argument, there was the sudden spike of salts in his blood flow. He had large quantities of salts in his body during his death, which we call hypernatremia. In hypernatremia, a person typically feels thirsty. The most serious symptoms of hypernatremia result from brain dysfunction. Severe hypernatremia can lead to confusion, muscle twitching, seizures, coma, and death. So, how did this condition occur in his body? Any clue? We couldn't find that, but the bottle that Miss Sasha gave had typically weird ingredients and salts. I think you should further investigate it. The police were informed about the reports, and we both rushed to the villa of the singer, who is currently under house arrest. Miss Sasha, we found salts and weird ingredients in your bottle, and Mr. Robert died from severe hypernatremia. The justice of Sword points at you, because before he had passed away, he demanded water from you. I drink salt-infused water to keep my voice intact and to keep throat infections away. She started to sob and pleaded in front of us that she was innocent. She was taken in for police custody, and the court will manage the rest of the hearing. We gave a press conference about the case and addressed questions of the media. After a few days, I visited the bakery again to pay my pending bill and to meet the staff. The staff members were happy to see me and greeted me with warm smiles. I paid my bill and talked to each staff personally. Rebecca was happy and asked me about my migraine conditions. That day, how did you know that I got a mild migraine attack? My mother was suffering from migraine, so I recognized the symptoms really fast. So, you live with your mother? No, sir. My mother passed away a year ago. I live on my own. I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Well, take this. I take $50 from my wallet and hand it over to her. Take it as your tip and use it wisely. She takes the money and her warm finger brush with mine. Her cheeks tinge like strawberries, and she gives me a peck on the cheek. I smile at her and walk towards the door. Sir, please do come here again. I turn around and say, I will come if I have time. I know you will. I nod to her and sit into my car and drive to my home with a smile. I was watching a soap opera on television while cooking my dinner. Then I hear a knock on the front door. Who is there? I shout, switching off the television. Sir, it's me, Daniel. I take a sigh of relief and opened the door. Daniel was my counterpart, as well as my personal spy. He used to track the backstory of the cases, as well as the victim. So, Daniel, what brings you here? The back history of Robert Jr. Tell me the juicy details. He was a drug dealer in South Carolina and was once arrested while delivering a load of cocaine capsules. This businessman earns the white money with the help of the black money. I said, listen, he used to execute his plans with the help of a female doctor. But after his arrest, she was absconding and still is on the wanted list. Here, see her photo. I take the file to view, and my head spins. I reach the kitchen counter for support. I could not believe my eyes. It was Rebecca. What happened? Daniel asked. She is the waitress who works at the bakery where Robert had died. For a few seconds, we glared at each other and rushed to our cars. I sped up my car, not worrying about getting a fine. I rush into the bakery and shout, "Where is Rebecca?" Vade rushes towards me with a note in his hand. "Rebecca quit her job this morning and left a note for you." I take the note and read, "Dear Thomas, take a warm coffee with a heavy breakfast to curb your migraine attacks. Before sleeping, drink a nice herbal tea. It will cure the migraine away. And what else will you like, sir? Your friend, Rebecca." Something catches my eye across the street, and I rush towards the window to see clearly. It's Rebecca, with rendered auburn hairs and a wicked smile. She waves at me, gives a flying kiss, and in the next second disappears. Murder at Kasserine Pass. Murder at Kasserine Pass, the Bo-Chebka Road, deep inside the Kasserine Pass, narrowed to little more than a camel track, along a dry riverbed and steep cliffs. Rooted in the pale sand, a grove of palm trees jutted out from the ground as if thrown down and forgotten long ago. The remnants of the U.S. 26th Regimental Combat Team used the shade of the palm trees to dig their foxholes. Covered in sand and blisters, men hacked until the exposed roots of the palm trees aggravated their progress. Collapsing, exhausted, they lay where they fell, swollen tongues aching for water. Lieutenant Myers walked among his men, giving words of encouragement, and promised water would arrive when teams returned from Ayin Boudrias up the road. As an officer, he thanked and encouraged his men for their hard fight against the Germans. He hoped fresh troops, supplies, and ammunition would arrive by the next morning. But he couldn't make promises. Around 2 in the morning, a mule train arrived with water, and Lieutenant Myers saw every man drank his fill. Some even vomited after they drank too greedily. Others, familiar with working in the heat, sipped slowly and intentionally. Lieutenant Myers lay down in a foxhole as exhausted as the rest and drifted off to sleep. At 04:30, Sergeant Thicket woke the lieutenant for him to walk rounds once again. Walking from foxhole to foxhole, he leaned over and checked his men. In the dim light, low in the eastern sky, his outline became visible among the tall palm trees. Approximately 05 o'clock, a single shot rang out far to the left of his position. Lieutenant Myers clutched his chest and dropped to the ground. Confused men, roused by the shot, began returning fire into the vast, empty valley in front of them, thinking they were under attack. Less than a minute later, the firing stopped, and the medics pronounced Lieutenant Myers dead. Captain Williams' task force Welvert, February 21st, 1943. Criminal Investigations Division, North Africa. I surveyed the ground where Lieutenant Myers lay after he'd been shot. It's possible a sniper took advantage of the early morning light. But further examination of the body suggests the shot came from much closer. The bullet struck the lieutenant on the upper left side of his chest. Damage to the heart and lungs, terminal. Some witnesses report hearing one shot, while others heard 2 or 3. The additional shots could have been an echo or edgy trigger fingers, as reported to me. Everyone began furring into the valley below. Furring stopped in less than a minute. No further casualties. Witnesses report the shot sounded nearest the last foxhole in the line, manned by Staff Sergeant Culver Anderson, Private First Class Andrew Taylor, and Private Jacob Clark. Interviews to follow. Suspect, Staff Sergeant Culver Anderson. Staff Sergeant Anderson. Witness say they heard a gunshot this morning from your foxhole around 500, said Captain Williams. Did you fire that shot? Captain Williams said, challenging him. No, sir. I heard a shot and thought the Germans were attacking, so I turned and looked around for them. I didn't see anyone, so I jumped out of my foxhole and ran along the line and told everyone to stop firing. Sergeant Anderson leaned forward, waving his hands in innocence. We are already low on ammunition, and we'd need it later if the Germans did attack, he said. Were you aware that the shot fired killed an officer? Asked Captain Williams. No, sir. Not until the firing died down. Rumor spread it might be an officer. I found out later, just like everyone else. Sergeant Anderson said. Were you alone in your foxhole, Sergeant? No, sir. There were 2 men with me, Private Taylor and Private Clark. They were sleeping, sir. I had the last watch, said Sergeant Anderson. Are you sure neither of them were awake and slipped away? Then maybe they fired the shot? Asked the captain. I'm sure of it, sir. I thought the shot came from behind me, and when I looked, I couldn't see anyone. It's possible a sniper hid on the hillside next to us. The sound of the shot may have been further beyond that, but these canyons are pretty steep. The explanation sounded plausible, but Captain Williams still didn't believe it came from the enemy. Captain Williams pivoted one last time and pointed a finger at Sergeant Anderson. Sergeant Anderson, don't play games with me. Our witness said it came from your foxhole. It had to be you, Private Taylor or Private Clark. Which one of you did it? Sir, I don't know who fired the shot or where it came from. All I know is, while I stood my post, I heard a shot. Sergeant Anderson said, more agitated than before. Captain Williams knew men like Sergeant Anderson. These were the men who would do all they could to protect a green recruit. He knew they'd cover for the new guys who were gun-shy or overeager to shoot. The possibility of an inexperienced soldier with an itchy trigger finger shooting the lieutenant thinking he saw the enemy. It was possible. He knew he'd never get a confession out of this man. Men like this were a rare breed in the army. Sergeant Anderson, we've been at Bao Chebka Pass, all of 18 hours. Everyone's tired after yesterday's fallback. We lost a lot of good men, and stragglers are still coming in across the line. These things happen. People get tired or confused, and no one really knows who they're fighting with every day. Is it possible you or a man with you mistook the lieutenant as an enemy soldier this morning? No, sir. I'd just met these men last night. I'd have known if anything were wrong, and nothing looked out of sorts. If there were anything, I'd have told you, said Sergeant Anderson. That will be all, Sergeant. You're dismissed, and I'll be in touch if I need you. Captain Shugart is taking over your company. Thank you, sir. Suspect. Private. First Class. Andrew Taylor. Private First Class Taylor. I am Captain Williams with the CID. Do you know what the CID is? Said the captain. Yes, sir. The CID is the Criminal Investigations Division of the United States Army. Sir, very good soldier. You're young to be a PFC. You've done well in the Army. I expect you'll be a corporal before long. Yes, sir. I served in junior ROTC in high school. They gave me a bump in rank when I enlisted, said Private Taylor. Wow, junior ROTC. You have the makings of an officer. Do you think you will try to be an officer someday? Asked the captain. Well, geez, sir, I don't know. I've never thought about it much until the war started. I thought I'd have to go to college first, said Private Taylor. No, of course not, son. Men of all ranks get promoted to second lieutenant. They're called field promotions. Have you ever heard of those? Well, yes, sir. I've heard of them, but I thought you needed to do something brave. I didn't think I've done anything brave yet. Well, Corporal, it takes a special soldier, someone with real leadership, to get promoted in the ranks, especially to the rank of officer. Captain Williams called him a higher rank to gauge Private Taylor's reaction. I'm only a private first class, sir. I have to wait a few more months to be a corporal. See, there you go. Honesty. Honesty is an outstanding trait to have as a soldier. I think we should make honesty a prime factor in the field commissioning program. Don't you? Said the captain. Well, I think so, sir. I think it would be important, said Private Taylor. That's good, soldier. I'm really glad you said that. And that brings me around to a question I have for you. Did you hear the gunshot this morning? Well, yes, sir. I heard it. Do you know where it came from? I'm not sure I know where it came from. It sounded nearby, but I couldn't be sure. I took the first watch and fell asleep around 2 a.m. You were sleeping. You had a rough day yesterday, and we lost a lot of good men. We lost another man this morning. What do you know about that? Yes, sir. It was a hard day yesterday. Private Taylor rubbed at his eyes as if trying to block out the images. I heard someone was shot, but I don't know much about it. Was it a sniper, sir? That's the rumor. Is that why I'm here this morning? Asked Private Taylor. Yes, Corporal. I mean Private Taylor. We lost a good man this morning. Lieutenant Myers died around 0500. The rumor is it came from a location near where you were sleeping. It's an unfortunate way to have a vacancy, but Lieutenant Myers died because of that shooting. Now we have a company without a lieutenant. We have a poor, dead man who will never know justice. The truth will have to come out someday. If we could solve this mystery right away, things may just fall into place for the right person. Maybe even a new second lieutenant could rise through the ranks. What do you think about that? Private Taylor wiggled in his seat. He looked excited or uncomfortable. It was hard for the captain to tell. Honestly, sir, I woke up when the shooting started. I don't know where the shot came from, he said. Thank you, Private. I'll let you go, and if I need anything more, can I count on you to be honest with me? Yes, sir. Private Jacob Clark. Private Clark. I am Captain Williams, the lead investigator for the Criminal Investigative Division. Witnesses say you were near the location of the shot fired this morning that killed Lieutenant Myers. Is that correct? Yes, sir. I heard the shot. It was only one shot, said Private Clark. Do you know who fired the shot? Asked Captain Williams. Sir? Said Private Clark. The shot. Did you see who fired the shot? Asked the captain. I remember nothing. It all happened so fast, said the private. If you knew who it is, are you aware it is a crime to withhold information about the person involved? Yes, sir. Are you saying you know who fired the shot? Asked the captain. Sir, no, sir. It all happened so fast. Did you know that covering for someone is also a crime? Maybe you know who fired the shot, and you just don't want to say. It's called being an accomplice to murder, said the captain. The kid looked dumbstruck. I didn't know that, sir. Honestly, it all happened so fast. Did you also know there is a second crime being committed by the killer if they are threatening a subordinate to covering up a murder? It's called retribution. If someone you know is telling you they would hurt you or kill you for telling the truth about this killing, then creating fear of retribution is a crime. I didn't know that, sir. Yes, Private Clark. It is a crime, and a very serious one. We do not look kindly upon those who threaten retribution to subordinates. If you know anything, you are free to tell me. I will make sure you are safe from the one threatening you, and I'll have them removed immediately. Is there anything you'd like to tell me, soldier? I'm sorry, sir. I don't know what you mean. I was in my foxhole this morning when I heard this rifle shot, and I jumped. I don't remember anything after that. Then everyone started shooting, said Private Clark. The young man looked sullen and weak. He slouched in the chair, staring into the distance, 100 miles away. Pacing back and forth across the tent, Captain Williams looked into the private eyes. He'd seen this before, after a fight. Unfortunately, the captain felt each man knew something he did or didn't want to say. Confessions didn't come easy. Captain Williams thought about a case 6 weeks ago where a junior enlisted and a captain fought behind a bar in Morocco. The enlisted man should have been court-martialed, and the officer reprimanded. Turns out, the two men knew each other from high school, and they fought over a girl they both knew. Neither confessed to starting the fight, and no witnesses came forward. The answer stared him in the face, but the guys covered for each other. Captain Williams believed the same thing might happen here. He released the private and stood at the tent flap, trying to piece together everything he knew. The men on the line were all lying to him. That much he knew. Kasserine Pass, February 19th, 1943, as Rommel's 10th Panzer Division plowed through the defenses covering the Kasserine Pass. The 26th Armored Brigade and the 26th Combat Team dug in along the canyons, running west towards Thala, Tunisia. The Americans put up stiff resistance, then withdrew. Hours of gunfire and hundreds of dead and dying littered the sand in their brutal retreat. Around 3,300 Americans were killed or wounded, and over 3,000 were taken prisoner. On the southern flank, Lieutenant Myers and the men of the 26th Combat Team held on as long as they could. Lieutenant Myers, we need to get those men out of those holes and behind the tanks, yelled Sergeant Anderson. Sergeant Anderson, you will leave those men where they are. They are the only thing between Rommel and Algeria. Do you understand? But sir, they are getting massacred out there. I just saw 3 men get run over in those shallow holes. They have to pull back. Sergeant Anderson, I will not tell you again. See to your men, that is an order. As Sergeant Anderson left the lieutenant, his anger fumed. He ran towards his line and did what he could to check on his men. Those men left, held out as long as they could, as the Germans moved closer and closer. He knew they couldn't hold the line. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Myers carried armfuls of ammunition to his men until he ran out. His radio man died early in the fight, and the 2 men who followed already wounded. Grabbing the radio, he jumped into a crater and found a soldier lying on the ground. 2 men lay beside him, already dead, as this one stared into the sky. Soldier, return fire, said Lieutenant Myers. I can't, sir. The words came out in a hopeless tone. I'm out of ammunition. We all are. That's how they died. They just ran out. Then they got shot. The exhaustion was clear. The battle raged on, and everyone fought on as best they could. Lieutenant, what do we do? He said pleadingly. Private, what is your name? He asked. Private Clark, sir. Private Clark, you are now my radio man. Get this thing working and listen for orders. Do you understand, Private? He said. Yes, sir. He struggled to talk from lack of water. He moved slowly, but he made it to the young lieutenant's side and grabbed the radio. No sooner than he'd picked up the handle, and he heard the words. I say again, pull back, pull back. Lieutenant, they ordered us to pull back. The words came out in a half shout. Without hesitation, Lieutenant Myers gave the signal for everyone to pull back. The Germans held nothing back that day. They took Kasserine Pass and they intended to keep it. By nightfall, every man, not killed or wounded, pulled back to Buchebka Pass. The Germans came from the east, and Sergeant Anderson guided his men out of the fight. Lieutenant Myers directed them south and along the cliff walls. By midnight, they were digging in and waiting for reinforcements. "Private, get over here and start digging. 2 men per foxhole, all along this line. The rest of you follow with me," said Sergeant Anderson. "Sarge, when do you think we'll get some water?" asked a soldier. "I'm working on it. Even if I have to take the lieutenant's canteen myself." All along the line, the remaining 110 men dug in and waited for anything that looked like help. Tank and truck noises echoed through the canyon. Everyone felt on edge. "Sarge, what do you think happened today?" asked Private Taylor. "We suffered a loss today, kid." His expression mild and disappointed. "We suffered a big loss today." Sergeant Anderson kept watch as Private Taylor and Private Clark dug the foxhole. Private Clark fell silent and moved at half the speed of Private Taylor. Private Taylor nodded at the sergeant. They both looked at the young man, struggling to keep sand from falling back into the hole. A look of concern and understanding crossed the sergeant's face. Taking the shovel from Private Clark, he began digging and let the man rest. He finished the hole and told the others to get some sleep. Each man took a 2-hour watch, leaving Private Clark last. Midway through, around 1500, a shot rang out. "Private, what did you just do?" asked Sergeant Anderson. "He wouldn't let us leave. We were there all day. He had to die." The rest of the men opened fire. Then the shooting died down. "We can't go back. We can't." Tears left dusty tracks down his face. The poor boy cried. "What do we do, Sarge?" asked Private Taylor. "We keep our mouths shut. That's what we do. I'll send him back to the aid station when they get here. He's done." The author created the thoughts and characters. This is a story of fiction. The events related to World War II have some factual information, but most details are from the author's imagination. Life and death. It took him 10 seconds to die. There's a lot he could have thought of in those 10 seconds. Likely among them was how he didn't want to die. There's a fear of the unknown in the heart of every human, an awareness that one day the end will come, that you won't have any control over it. Cultures around the world have stories of what will happen in death. Will you arrive at the pearly gates? Do you need payment for the ferryman to bring you to the afterlife? Or will you find yourself born again and again until you achieve enlightenment, regardless of what he believed in life? In the final moments, did it bring him comfort? Did it bring him peace? Or did he think of the past? Living by the lake, first fearing its depth as a tadpole before emerging as a conqueror. Reliving the carefree moments of youth, of the rocks and sand between toes, and the sap from climbing trees. Growing up with first two parents, then only one, knowing the sorrow that it can bring to one so young. Long nights at the bonfire, first with families, then with friends. The first look, the fire-glow skin, and the reflective eyes. With her came quick smiles, soft hands, and first times. The boy becoming a man as nights lengthened and the sky darkened. She left with the autumn breeze, and he left that lake too. He woke early and trained and marched. He climbed 4-meter walls, crossed ditches, spent hours at the firing range, and completed field exercises in combat gear. Discipline and mental fortitude brought on new meaning. And then they weren't exercises anymore. He would not have lingered on his military tours, but he would have seen faces of his comrades, dead and alive. With those that couldn't be saved, there'd be the guilt, the sadness, the regret. With those who survived, he'd always have a bond. His superiors who directed troops across the land. Civilians he had helped, who he hoped were doing as well as they could in a war-ravaged country. Together, they had molded him into a man with iron will and direction, rough around the edges, with kindness deep within his heart. It was a life that he'd relived in nightmares. When he left the military, he came back to the lake. Its calmness was a balm for his soul. Watching over it and the people who surrounded it calmed his mind and steadied his heart. His work was now to protect and serve the people, to wear a different uniform. He was wearing that uniform as he died. Would he be thinking of his family? He'd never been much of a cook, and he spent many nights at the Main Street diner. She too had come back to the lake, escaping the corporate ladder for the hustle and bustle of the small town, taking over the diner from the previous owners. They sat at the same table, night after night, week after week, month after month. She was a strong woman, able to stand on her own 2 feet, and with him as an equal. They'd chosen to walk their paths together, 2 homes and hearts becoming one. She'd know that this was a possibility with his work, and had never failed to say goodbye as he left. Would he take solace in this, knowing that she'd feel sorrow, grief, and pain, but that she'd be able to continue without him? Or would he worry the most about the pain in a tinier heart, to a soul that was just beginning to blossom? Ariel was 9 years old, his little girl who he had spent countless hours as a baby just counting 10 fingers and 10 toes. He taught her to ride a bike and throw a ball. They'd planned a camping trip for the summer. What would she think of his never coming back? Would she understand that it was his duty? Would she resent it and him? Would she remember all the times they'd shared? Would he be able to think at all? Would the pain override his thoughts in his last moments? Would his world focus only on that and the sounds that echoed around him? From the initial sound of the gunshot to the impact, the pain in his abdomen, and the retaliatory shot from his partner that took down the killer. They had been called for attempted shoplifting at a gas station near the highway. The cashier had caught him, and one of the customers became concerned when the situation had begun to escalate and called the police. They hadn't known about the gun. They hadn't known that the man had gone off his medications. What he did see was that there was a young boy in the store as well, no more than 12. Felix had gone in to get snacks while his dad filled the truck with gas. It was at him that the gun had been pointed in that moment. It was Felix that was saved when he died. Was it Felix that he thought of? The young boy he'd sacrificed his life to save. How would he spend his second chance at life? Would he go to the funeral and see the little girl crying in a black dress? Would he see her around school as his eyes closed for the last time? Would he see into the future? Felix becoming Ariel's self-appointed big brother and guardian, forever tied together by tragedy. Growing up together at the lake, him pushing her when required and comforting her when needed. Her ensuring that he focused on schoolwork as much as sports. Her scared and angry when he told her he was going to the police academy. That he wanted to help others like her father, who had saved him. Through times of luck and difficulty, Ariel and Felix lived them together. And one day, down by the lake where they had grown up, where her father grew up, Ariel would walk down the aisle to him with her mother by her side. Ariel and Felix would live a long life together at the lake with their family. It wasn't always easy, with fights and sadness, but they came through. When their son was born, they named him Liam, after his grandfather, and sometimes they'd sit on the porch as dusk settled around them, holding hands, thinking about the man who'd given them both so much. Though he would miss all of those moments, the foresight and knowledge that they would be okay, that they'd live a life full of happiness and love. Would that give him true peace? For in those 10 seconds, Liam lived. The eyes in the forest. The forest was bright and warm. The sunlight dappled across the leaf-covered ground in a way that evoked images of autumn holiday, brochures, and children laughing. There was a slight breeze rustling the upper branches, but down at ground level, all it did was bring the warmth of the sun in from out in the meadows all around. For everyone not working, it was a weekend to head out and make the most of the last of summer before the cold settled in. It was, I thought, a terrible place for a murder scene. "All right, Andrews?" my boss asked as he came over. Despite the fair weather, he was still clutching a takeout cup of coffee like a lifeline, and I could smell the alcohol from whatever he'd been doing last night. "All right, sir. I didn't think you were on duty today." Judging by the state of Detective Matthews, neither had he. However reckless he was on his nights off, Matthews was a consummate professional out in the field when the public could see him. Tell me about it. But 4 bodies in 3 months. No one gets their Saturdays when that happens. Some of us didn't have many Saturdays anyway, but I only gave him a tight smile in response. It wasn't right to bitch about hours and shift patterns when there was a dead body in the vicinity. Another car pulled up into the cordoned off area, and Matthews turned to watch it. It wasn't a vehicle I recognized, but I wouldn't have considered myself an expert on the department's cars. Besides, 4 bodies in 3 months. This was when the top brass got called in, and all the specialists scraped up from wherever they usually lurked. Matthews was having the same thought. More goddamn people sticking their noses in, telling me what to do. He walked back over to the car park, still muttering, leaving me to my solo guard duty. The investigators would go over the area first. Then maybe I'd get called in to help sweep the area. Until then, my contribution to catching a murderer was to stand still and keep people away. Of course, to get to me, they'd have already had to get through 2 other police cordons. I was nothing more than window dressing at this stage. But the more serious the crime, the more window dressing the bosses wanted. Couldn't let the press take a photo of empty space now, could we? Whoever had just turned up seemed to causing something of a stir with the other detectives. They all had more sense than to start shouting. But I recognized the way Matthews had started pacing. A few words drifted across the forest to me, though I didn't get much other than tone. No one was happy about the new person turning up, and I wondered what sort of specialist would cause such a stink. Maybe it's our own Sherlock Holmes, I thought to myself with a snort. It would make the shift more interesting, at least. But there was no way that Sherlock Holmes would work with a modern policing system. All those deductions and assumptions, the evidence courts would be laughing themselves to death. The new arrival was coming my way. I wiped the smirk from my face and stood up a little straighter, staring dead ahead as I watched them out the corner of my eye. Smart suit, skinny glasses, slightly cropped tie, and far younger than I'd expected for a specialist. At a guess, I'd put the man at a few years older than me, early 30s or so, although he could just have had one of those faces that ages well. His height didn't help, and though the ground was uneven, he was about eye level with me when he stopped. "Officer Andrews?" he asked, scanning me up and down. I'd braced for this moment. Who doesn't love a woman in uniform? But there was nothing to his look. It was more like he was trying to read my name on my legs, rather than checking out any curve they may or may not have had. Yes, sir. Even though he was nameless, anyone out of uniform at a crime scene was pretty much guaranteed to be my superior. Better safe than sorry. Can you take me down to the crime scene, please? One moment, sir. I'd barely tapped the call button on my radio before Matthews started waving his arm at me and giving the thumbs up. I tried to nod back, though he didn't watch long enough to see. Right this way, sir. I led the way through the trees to where the body had been found, all the while fighting down the urge to kick the leaves as I went. Precise placement wasn't worth preserving when the leaves were so light and likely to move naturally. But it was hardly very professional. We came round one particularly large tree, meant to keep the victim out of sight, we figured. And there she was. No name, no purse, no shoes, clothing torn. Despite the warm air, I shivered. There was no getting used to this bit. Here, sir, I said. It was obvious, but it didn't feel right to just wave and go, ta-da. Poor woman needed some respect in death, even if she didn't get any in life. Thank you, Andrews. You can go back to your post now. Are you sure, sir? Solo investigation. Seriously? And I hadn't even gotten the man's name, let alone his rank or speciality. But Matthews had waved me on. If this went wrong, I could pin the blame on him, right? No, that was childish. I'm sure. Thank you. As he dismissed me, he knelt down by the body and started looking at it, leaving me to walk away. I turned back half a dozen times, but he didn't seem to be doing anything, just staring, waiting, perhaps. But then what for? Me to leave? My stomach tied itself in knots, and I looked at the dead woman's face. I didn't like leaving her here alone with him. Rank left me with no option, though. I dragged my heavy feet back to where I'd been standing, and was grateful to see that Matthews had wandered closer again. Sir, I said as I came up behind him. What's up? He asked. Despite the coffee cup hanging empty in his fingers, he looked rougher than he had earlier. Whoever the stranger with the body was, he sure could rile people up. Am I good to leave him alone? Sir, only protocol and all, Matthews snorted. Ha, protocol? Some fancy arse from God knows where rocks up, and suddenly we're ignoring it. Yeah, it's fine, Andrews. He's got special dispensation. Curiosity got the better of me. How come? Because of his impeccable completion rate. Solved more crimes than half of our department, by all accounts. So the sun shines from him, and we all have to bend over and worship. Damn it. If I knew we'd be standing around with our thumbs up our arses, I'd have gone and gotten another coffee. I bit back, all my opinions on what that would do for the twitch under his eye, and watched as he walked away again. Curiosity was still burning inside me. Impeccable completion rate? What did that even mean? And if he worked alone, did that mean he had some secret technique for solving crimes? I headed back to my post, but when I got there, I checked over my shoulder. No one was watching. Not that they had any reason to. All the detectives were huddled together, all complaining, judging by the way they folded their arms or put their hands on their hips. They really were quite a melodramatic lot. The other uniforms about were scanning the area, sorting paperwork, checking maps, milling about, trying to look useful. There was no telling when a camera could appear. I slipped past my spot and retraced my steps back to the body. There couldn't be some secret technique for solving crimes. So what exactly was that guy doing? I had to know. And I had to know that it wasn't anything dodgy. Even with clearance from the boss, I'd brought the man out here and I'd left him here. He was my responsibility. Between the crispy leaves and my full uniform, it was hard to sneak. But I did the best I could until I got to a nearby tree. From there, I could lean round and watch the guy work. It took me a few moments and lots of blinking before I registered what I was seeing. The man was crouched on the ground where I'd left him, but he wasn't looking at the woman. He was focused on the pair of squirrels sat across from him, on the other side of the corpse. To add insult to injury, he was talking to them. So it wasn't an attack here. This was just a body dump. My shoulders slumped. A great detective, wonderful record, and his secret technique was explaining things to animals? My brother would talk out programming problems to his dog. But this was just ridiculous. At least, no one else saw my brother doing that. And at least he wasn't doing it for a murder inquiry. Yeah, the man knew her, was crying the whole time. I froze at the other voice. There was no way. Did he say anything? The detective asked. Yeah, the squirrel, replied. Kept apologizing, saying it was an accident. I'm sorry, that sort of thing. And then what? He took her shoes, the other goddamn squirrel said. Then he ripped her shirt, rumpled her clothes and all. She was properly dressed before she got here. He did all that here. Anything else? Don't think so. That all you need? Yes. Thank you. That's most helpful. The detective smiled and nodded at the squirrels before they turned and scurried away. My eyes were dry from the non-blinking staring, and I ran a hand across my face. There was no way I just saw that. Had Matthews infected me with his hangover? The detective pulled out his notebook and jotted down some notes before he looked up and round the clearing. I only just ducked back behind the tree in time. Is there anyone else? He said, just loud enough to carry, but not enough to reach back to to where the other officers were. Heaven forbid they see him talking to the animals. On cue, a mouse scurried up and perched on a branch sticking out of the leaves. "Yes," it said. "And what did you see?" "See? Not much. But they smelt the same. Her and the one who brought her. Exactly the same? Like they lived together?" "Just so. Thank you. Anything else?" "No. Don't see much, I'm afraid." "No worries. Thank you for your help anyway." The mouse scurried away as the detective made more notes, and the last strand of my sanity snapped. I stormed out from my hiding space, oblivious to the fact I was marching through a crime scene. "All right, what the hell is going on?" I said. The detective jumped to his feet, guilty as though he'd killed the woman, before a carefully schooled expression took over. "I am investigating this murder, officer. You should be back at your post." "No, none of that. What the hell is happening? How the hell are the animals talking? And why the hell are you so calm about it?" "Miss, I can assure you..." He cut off mid-sentence and stared at me as though I was the weird one in this scenario. "Hang on? Talking? Don't pull that crap with me. I saw you taking notes. You heard them, but so did you." "You heard the animals talking?" "Yes, but how?" He ignored the anguish in my voice and just kept staring. I was halfway through, weighing up whether to just punch him, assaulting a superior, and how would I explain why, when he broke into a huge grin. I hadn't realized how morose he'd looked before, and I blushed at the sheer childlike joy on his face. "I've never met anyone else like this before," he whispered. "Hey, prove it. Mouse, come back." The mouse scurried up again, though it shuffled away when it saw me. "Yes?" The detective spun to me and nodded. "Go on, talk to it." I said. Would this count as playing along? Or was I losing my mind as well? For the first time in my life, I wanted nothing more than to be on guard duty. "Hello? Mouse?" "Greetings," the mouse said with a little bow. I shook my head. I wasn't bowing to a mouse. "Yes, fine. Greetings. Are we done now?" I asked the detective. "Because I am currently talking to a mouse, and I would like some explanations." "One more thing," he said. "Ask it about the weather. Are you for real right now? Just do it." I rolled my eyes, but academy training was hard to kick. Someone says jump. You ask how high, or ask after the weather. "How's the weather?" I said to the mouse with a wild grin on my face. "Fair," the mouse replied. "The leaves are falling early this year, but the rain has stayed off for now." "Great." The detective took a step towards me and peered at my face. "What did he say? You heard what it said." "No, you tell me." "Repeat what the mouse said." Shaking my head at the stupidity of the statement, I did as I was told. "The leaves are falling early, but the rain has stayed off for now." Is that it? Are we done with this madness now? You really did hear it. Yes, I told you that. Yes, I'm sorry. I just had to make sure that you weren't lying. All sense of decorum went out the window. Look, mate, of all the things I'm going to lie about, I can hear mice complain about the weather. Isn't one of them? The detective ran a hand across his hair and smiled sheepishly. Yeah, guess not. I'm sorry. Like I said, I've never met anyone else who can do this. I had to be sure, but you know, how? How are we hearing animals, Doc? No idea. I've never found any explanation or even a suggestion that it's happened before. Then how did I discover it? I used to do it as a kid, but then I figured it was just something wrong with my head. One day, I got fed up at a crime scene, saw a squirrel, and asked for help. And it led me right to where the stolen goods had been stashed. Insurance fraud, and I proved it in about 10 minutes. From there, it just kind of grew. So what, your Detective Inspector Doolittle? He laughed and looked even younger as years of secrets drifted away from him. Something like that, I guess. What happened here then? He looked down at the body, and the smile dropped. Accidental death. Deliberate dumping. She died in her home, I reckon. Maybe a fight. Maybe sheer unhappy chance. Her partner panicked, knew about all the murders out here, so came and dumped her here. Maybe he's got a record or something, but I've got a registration number for the car, so we can go and check it out. By the sounds of it, he's feeling guilty, so it shouldn't take long to push him to a confession. I had been nodding along till I fixated on one word. We? He looked back at me and blushed. I thought so. I mean, I could use a hand working all these cases, and you can work the same way as me. Hold on. You mean become a detective? Don't you want to? I mean, in truth, I hadn't thought about it until then. My eyes fell to the corpse again. How many things had she been planning to do, or put off doing? I had to swallow the lump out my throat before I could answer, though. All right, I'm in. Assuming you can sort it with the boss. The detective grinned at me. I have a lot of pull. I can figure something out. He stuck his hand out, which I took. Detective Inspector Christopher Griffiths, Officer Iris Andrews. A pleasure to meet you, Iris. Now, let's go talk to a murderer, shall we? The murderous twins. The McKellen twins felt the librarian's stinky breath brush against their nape, so they quickly slid their dirt and blood-stained hands under the table. Shut up, you two, hissed the librarian. Sorry, said Milo McKellen, with the fakest of smiles. The librarian stomped back to his dimly lit desk, where he resumed his scribbling on a notebook. Occasionally, he raised his bald head to survey the hall like a living security camera. Martin McKellen peeked under the table. A few droplets of blood had stained his jeans, and now it would be impossible for him, or rather, his mother, if she hadn't been gone, to wash them away. They would become foolproof evidence, marked forever on his favorite pair of pants. A pale moonlight cast long shadows over the library hall, where the McKellen twins, still soaking wet from the rain, had found shelter. They had sat on one of the long benches, their hands and arms covered in dirt and blood. And now they were arguing. Their disagreement kept on drawing the attention of the librarian, who scowled at the twins and scolded them whenever they spoke a little louder. "See that corner over there?" Martin asked Milo. "Let's go talk there. He won't interrupt us." The twins tiptoed to a corner far from where the librarian sat, hoping to get more privacy. They were surrounded by books, as dusty as if no one had ever touched them except the person who had placed them there centuries prior. "So," said Milo. "What were we?" "The body," said Martin. "Yes, the body. I think we should have buried it instead of letting it sink into the lake," Martin snorted. "As if a hump of soil in the middle of the woods is something you see every day. Better than a dead woman in the trunk of her own car, if you ask me." What other options were there? I couldn't even think straight. Those damn blue lights. "Well, it's no use discussing this now," said Milo. "We got rid of her." Something hit the floor and echoed throughout the library hall. Martin peeked out. The librarian was kneeling near the bench where the twins were sitting earlier, and he was struggling to get back up. The ink from his fountain pen had bled in a large puddle onto the marble floor, and now the librarian was fumbling for a tissue to clean that mess with. Milo peeped too, and he said, "He'll be busy for a while." Martin leaned against the book-filled shelves and sighed. "We can't hide in a library forever, Milo." "I know," he said. "But we've got to at least wait for the rain to stop so that we can hop on a train and leave." "Where were you thinking?" Martin asked. Milo shrugged. "I don't know. Canada?" Suddenly, a clap of thunder boomed in the night sky outside, and the library's doors burst open. Martin looked over at the two men who had just entered the building. They were wet, just like the twins were, but they wore blue uniforms, like police officers, said Martin in a quivering whisper. "There's two of them. What do we do?" Milo whispered back. Martin shook his head. "I have no idea," he thought. He was afraid to even think at this point. "They came looking for us," said Milo. "No doubt about that. Otherwise, what would two police officers do in a library after hours?" "Hush, Milo," said Martin. "Please, don't let us be caught." "Good evening," thundered a voice. It was one of the two men. The twins cocked their ears. "I'm Agent Phillips, and this is Agent Clifford. We're looking for a couple of young men, probably in their 20s, red-haired, pretty thin." The librarian did not answer, so the other police officer, Clifford, urged him. "Have you seen someone with this profile by chance?" Martin held his breath. He prayed the librarian didn't reveal where he and his brother were hiding. Second by second, a thick silence was filling up the atmosphere, like a cake rising in the oven. Except This oven was far too hot, and this cake was about to explode. "Avoid us any trouble, Mr. Librarian," said Agent Phillips. "Just tell us if you've seen them or not, and we won't bother you any longer." Martin pushed Milo back into the corner and flattened himself against the bookshelves in case their cover was about to be blown. The librarian cleared his throat and spoke. "No," he said. "I haven't seen them." Martin and Milo gasped as quietly as they could and peeped out from behind the bookshelves once again. The two police officers were looking at one another. Clifford's eyes became two narrow slits, two poison darts he was now aiming at the librarian. "Are you sure?" said the agent. "Sure," said the librarian, trying to sound more sure than he was. "Very well," said Agent Phillips, nudging at Clifford. "Sorry to have disturbed you. We'll leave you now." But Clifford turned and pointed at the bench where the twins were sitting earlier. Under it, there was a mess of paper tissues and ink. And, "Look," said Martin to his brother. "The blood is gone." Milo looked down at the blood on his hands, by now dry, and then over at the bench. "What blood, Martin?" "When I hid my hands under the table, I spilled blood everywhere, on my jeans, on the floor." Clifford's voice boomed once again. "What's that over there, Mr. Librarian?" Agent Phillips grabbed his colleague by his arm. "Let's stop it here, Ben. He says he hasn't seen them." Clifford broke free of Philip's grip and fetched the heap of stained paper from the ground. He marched back to the librarian's desk, where the poor man was standing still, but frail, like a clay statue. Clifford unfolded one tissue and slammed it on the librarian's desk. It was stained with large blotches of blood. "What about this, Mr. Librarian?" Clifford scoffed. "Been dabbing the floor all night long, haven't you?" The librarian didn't move a muscle. He just stared at the stained tissue. "These kids have slaughtered their mother," Clifford roared. For a moment, all the books in the library seemed to have teetered, like there had been a severe but rapid earth tremor. "Clifford, calm down now," Agent Phillips commanded. He turned to the librarian. "Tell us the truth, sir. As you can see, this is pretty urgent." The librarian slowly pointed his index finger at the corner where the twins were hiding. Milo gulped, and Martin stopped breathing altogether. The two police officers looked at one another one last time. Agent Clifford pulled out 2 pairs of handcuffs, and Phillips led the way. When they reached the darkened corner, where the twins were supposed to be hiding, though, there were only rows of shelves full of dusty tomes to welcome them.